Well, our theme on CNBC today, CNBC Africa, is emerging markets, and we're looking at Turkey now. One of the few bright spots in Europe, it's been described as. It's bagged 2 credit rating upgrades despite back-to-back world debt crises. And after being upgraded to investment grade for the first time in 2 decades, the Turkish economy has made the transition from perennial underachiever to regional superstar. Putting it rather strongly, but joining us to say whether it is too strong an assessment of Turkey is Tom Wheeler, who is former South African ambassador to Turkey and a lifelong diplomat as well, Tom, so you know your way around these places.
Right.
The normal posting is 3 to 4 years as an ambassador, so you got to know the country pretty well. Give us the context. It's not a country that we have too many links with.
Yes. Well, I think we have increasing links because the Turks are making a very concerted outreach to Africa. And to other countries since their new government came to power in 2002, after they had their own fiscal cliff in 1999 when the IMF and the World Bank had to come in there and sort them out, and then they had an earthquake. But when the new government came in, things started to improve. The attempt to get into the European Union really took off by a lot of new legislation that was passed, and gradually they have climbed to where they are, where I jokingly say that the European Union wants to join them.
We're seeing this stride now being made in terms of them, building relations with other countries across the globe and Africa specifically. What has been emphasized is that we've seen quite a decrease in trade since 2009. Was that purely on the back of the economic crisis?
I believe it was, yes. I think it was growing very well up until then, and it's I think, starting to come back. And the Turkish bureaucracy and the whole business community are making very concerted efforts to get back, particularly in South Africa, which I obviously know best, but it applies all over Africa. They send trade missions, their ministers come here. I've been to several of their events here in Sandton, where they brought large trade delegations accompanying ministers to talk to local businesses about business opportunities.
It's one thing those talks happening. What kind of interest are we seeing from the investment community, let's say, in South Africa right now?
That's perhaps just a little beyond my knowledge, but there are something like 100 Turkish companies in South Africa. And there are also 2 business councils, one of them run by an organization in Turkey called DEIK, D-E-I-K, Turkish Foreign Trade Council. The agreement was signed in 1998 while I was still there, and the Johannesburg Chamber of Commerce and Industry are the South African partner in that. Then there's another one called the South African Turkish Business Association, which also has about 49 members, and those are Turkish and South African companies, but specifically in South Africa. So there are 2 organizations focusing on developing trade with the full support of the Turkish government. Now, they had a Turkish festival at Zoo Lake about a month or so ago, and the Turkish ambassador was there with his commercial counselor in a specific booth where he was interviewing potential business partners and doing the whole thing. So they really are driving it.
They're taking it seriously. You mentioned they had their own fiscal cliff and then an earthquake. Is that a metaphor? No, it was a real earthquake.
It was a real one. I know. I was in a building 16 floors up when it happened, and I could feel it.
But their economy, I think from a South African point of view, we often are looking for models. The state wants to intervene more in the economy. It likes to get models to do it. What would Turkey teach us in terms of private sector nationalization, companies that are parastatals or semi-parastatal?
Well, it took a process for them because it was very much a statist economy back until about 1980. When the Prime Minister came in and denationalized, did the not the Sasol, but the
privatization.
Yes, the ISCOR thing.
Listing of former state companies.
They were, and I visited some of these state steel companies. They were really totally decrepit. They'd really run down, and he moved towards privatization. Then these events of 1999. They hit the wall. They were financially in serious trouble, And they were obliged by the IMF and the World Bank, before they would give them assistance, to privatize all the state banks. There were a series of state banks, an agriculture bank, a housing bank, this bank, that bank, all with the minister in charge. So the minister was making sure that, that his buddies or his party associates got loans from the state bank, to the point where the economy was imploding. And a lot of wasteful spending. You know, as I travel around Turkey, every little town I went to, I got a great big thick book on this town, hardcover, shiny paper and so on. All that sort of wasteful expenditure had to be stopped.
Yeah.
And that,
Tom, it's also very, very indicative of the kind of foreign policy that Turkey has in place. And I was reading this morning, I mean, the Turkish foreign policy towards Africa is not only based on economic and trade objectives, but also incorporates a comprehensive approach, which includes development of Africa through technical and project assistance. And that's critical to any relationship in terms of where it's headed down the road.
Indeed. One of the first things they did was they joined the African Development Bank, I think that's the correct name, and as a non-continental partner, which I put $50 million or whatever the figure was in, so that they could qualify for construction contracts. Now the Turks are big on construction. Even the president, when I was there, was an engineer, and they have all these water projects all over the country and so on. So construction is a big thing for them. And that's one of them. They also do a lot of work, humanitarian work. A lot of students go there, obviously come back with you know, an attitude, positive, we hope. Turkish Airlines flies to every African country practically, including Mogadishu, including Somalia, where nobody else flies. And they've got a Turkish embassy. It's, I think, the only country that's got an embassy. So they really are serious about getting into Africa.
So certainly an emerging market that we possibly should be paying a little bit more attention to. Tom, thanks so much for having joined us at the desk this morning. Tom Wheeler is former South African ambassador to Turkey.